Our guest for today was born in Cape Town, South Africa, but moved to the US as a kid to see his early days in music spent in Seattle. His playing in the high school jazz band rewarded him with a scholarship to study music in New York, where he started to develop a style that could be described as a fusion of jazz, rock, funk, and soul. And fast forward to today, I can proudly say that he has worked with members of bands like Pearl Jam, REM, Rage Against the Machine, Pendulum, Santana, and many, many more. And as you might understand, I want to hear all about that. So therefore, big welcome, Ari Joshua. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah, I'm very happy to have you on, and I'm very curious for this talk and to talk a bit about your music. And I went through a bit of the catalog, and I'm really surprised by how versatile it is. I also noticed that you're doing more than just making music. I saw some things about you being the founder of a record label and a music school, being an educator. So handing over that skills to the next generations. And I want to hear all about that. But I want to start with one question that I always start with. And that's how would you describe what you do creatively yourself?
Creatively, I kind of like to go really deep when I talk about art and music.
Love that.
Some people are good at doing stuff on the surface, but for some reason I have like an allergy to surface stuff. I like to go deep, but
nice.
For me, I look at like, this world we live in and this life as, what is it made of and why are we here and what am I doing and what am I using my time for and from a young age, like recognizing what was important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of factors that go into that, like whether it be like going back generationally or just what I was exposed to or, family dynamics that pushed me or just being where I was at the time I wasn't exposed to the music I was.
Mm-hmm.
But like ultimately, I think, all life is vibration. And I think that whatever it is that makes up the universe is closer to music than I think, than the material things that we think kind of make up our reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like so fascinating because when you study rhythm and time and stuff like that, like a lot of the ways that like just the laws of the universe or the solar system kind of works is similar to what makes good music. And so for me, I think it's an exploration of like the moment and what can you do to express what it's like to be a sentient being like in the moment and and being able to create with other people. And so for me, like, I lost track of what the question was, the pointed question, but essentially just, being creative to me is exploring the moment and experiencing a depth of experience that I found I can access best through the music.
Yeah, I really love that because the question, like, how do you describe what you do creatively is you can interpret it in so many ways. So sometimes I just get the answer, I'm a singer-songwriter, and sometimes I get the answer, I'm an entertainer, and that's broader than just that. And sometimes someone comes up with an answer that's a bit more deep like this, and I really love it for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of me like wishes I was better at like being able to say I'm a entertainer, I'm a singer-songwriter, I'm a guitar player, I'm an educator.
Yeah.
But really, I'm just all that stuff, and I'm actually kind of sometimes struggling to figure out that side of everything, and it pushes me back to just focusing on being creative.
Yeah. Do you find like a lot of different things interesting then, and then you just dive into it because you find it interesting in the moment? Is that what you mean as well?
I mean, yeah, I guess like, again, not to get too deep, but we're living in this like quantum reality.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally like millions of things that could happen at any moment and millions of options. So how do you like, it's almost like, how do you focus on anything anymore? But I guess that's part of why I like being creative and being an artist is that, I get the opportunity to say with all these different directions that could be pulled in, like, this is what I want to do right now.
Yeah.
Or this is what's important.
But if I get it correctly, like you're mostly trying to channel it into music related art forms, right? Or are you also like doing visual arts and things like that? Or You
You know,
apart from appreciating it.
when I was a kid, I used to love doing visual art, and
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of drawings and loved those classes. And I have like a journal, and I'm always, drawing patterns and things like that in there. But for the most part, yeah, music has been the central, reoccurring life's work.
Yeah. Very cool. And I quickly mentioned like the genres jazz, rock, funk, soul, or at least it has like touches of that everywhere. Is that like the genres you would mention yourself as well if you're talking about what you're making?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started off. If I go back all the way, I think it was like the blues that I got into.
Mm.
And my dad had a record collection that was in our house. It was actually this shelf came from Cape Town. Like
Mm.
there's some furniture that I still have that has always been the family. This was all records. Like one of these shelves were all records, and there was like a record player in the middle, and you know what I mean, like old speakers.
Yeah.
And this was in the house I grew up in, and flipping through those records, it was like really Jimi Hendrix, and like watching how
Mm.
enthusiastic he was or other people were about Jimi Hendrix, and then my mind was like, okay, well, if this guy can create this type of sounds and energy and like vibrations or whatever and experience, how did he get there? And I traced it backwards, and then that got me into like, oh well, he loved this blues guitar player and that guy. So it started
Mm.
with the blues, and then the blues like morphed into like who else is kind of playing like that. And then like all of a sudden being in Seattle, like at 11 years old, 12 years old, the grunge
Mm.
explosion happened when I was like at that very influential age, just picking up the instrument.
Yeah.
And there was like to me, a connection between like Hendrix and that grunge sound. I mean, both being also from this area, but,
Mm.
uh, so that like became a big thing, like rock and roll and blues. And then I got into the jazz band at my high school
Mm.
at 14. So like, I had like 3-4 years of this rock core blues. And then I remember at the audition, he was asking me to play
Then
a
it was a
blues.
jazz band.
Yeah. And then I didn't have any clue, like, what are these chords? Like F7
Yeah.
sharp 9. And
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
play this? And
The
I was
finger
hanging,
breakers. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm hanging out with like these horn players, and they're trying to explain to me how they think of music, which was totally different.
Mm.
And I just fell in love with the expressiveness and the history and the greats. And I think those things transcend the style. Like
Mm.
if somebody's like one of the greatest of all time, like let's figure out what that's all about.
Yeah.
More important to what kind of style it is. And just got really lucky that different kinds of music were exposed to me by the time I was like 15, 16. I kind of had a good idea of all the things I like.
Yeah, exactly. And then at what age did you pick up the guitar? Sorry, was that around 11 that you picked it up or?
I think it was like closer to like 12 or 13. I think at 11, told my parents I wanted to play guitar. They got us a piano, took some piano
You're
lessons.
like, it has strings, but it's not a guitar. Yeah.
I was pretty
Yeah.
upset. Like I took the lessons, and I remember getting like I remember the teacher being like, oh, he's pretty good, he should keep doing it. But I didn't want to read music, and I wanted to play my feeling. I was more interested in like being punk rock, and
Yeah.
smashing my guitar in the backyard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it was just more,
Yeah.
it was different. And, I think piano died off, and my folks were like, well, we're not going to pay for a guitar. We don't have the money. We're not putting money into this. But they were like, you can save up your money. So I did. I started doing like chores and, making like,
Great.
$3 a week at
Yeah.
this, $8 at that. And eventually I had enough money. And actually what happened was the guy up the street, who was a friend of the family, bought me this guitar that was called the Terminator when I was like about 12.
That
And
sounds badass. Yeah.
it was pretty cool. It had a built-in speaker. And, this is like anyone who's watching the interview, it's like a good history lesson, because people don't remember that there was this time when you couldn't order stuff online. You couldn't see what the options were. Like if we got like a catalog,
Mm.
of some sort that had all this stuff in it, and like that's what you have access to, whatever's printed in that thing.
Yeah.
And this instrument was in there, and he bought it for me. Took the money that I'd saved up, and then bought my first guitar because the Terminator like wouldn't stay in tune.
Yeah.
It had a
It
built-in
sounded
speaker.
badass,
It
but
was cool. It was cool. Like you could turn it up all the way, and it was like
everywhere.
yeah, like
Free distortion.
and but like yeah. So
Awesome.
I think it was like around that time.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, you already mentioned like you had a lot of music surrounded around you then when you were young as well in the house with the record players and stuff. Like music was a thing at your parental house, so to say, or
Uh,
you grew up with music around you.
yeah, I mean, I when you I had a really like interesting kind of trajectory. You know what I mean? Because being born in Cape Town and
Yeah.
how my family ended up in Cape Town as not being a native population. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and so there was this like, and then moving to America, like I had this like we didn't know what I don't think my folks knew what America was going to be like.
Mm.
So, and my family, like, I'm not like sort of religious, so to
Mm.
speak, in a like choosing one religion kind of way. But my grandfather was like a rabbi. So like there was this like, and he was a cantor, which is like they lead the singing, and I never met him. Like he
Yeah.
died before I was born. But so my parents, like, when we came over, like they were like, we're going to put you in a school that's like a religious school. So we would
Mm.
sing like every morning, every afternoon. There was like prayers that we would sing after every time we ate, like lunch. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
so I had this like singing and like this like idea of like
Expressing. Yeah.
expressing and like group
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
harmonizing and rhythm
Yeah.
and it was like, but also like with this intention to it. And I think that was a super big.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you mentioned about like the growing up dynamic, I understood you were born in Cape Town and like that was still the apartheid regime there then at
Yeah.
that time, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's so weird because like, okay, you're in Germany, but it's such an
Yeah.
interesting thing because my grandfather essentially escaped the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And he was, you know what I mean? And his story is unbelievable how he kind of like got out. But then he made it to
Yeah.
London and he meets my grandmother, who was this incredible math and science person. Like she was one of the early women to kind of go to like one of those universities. I can't remember which one, like Cambridge or Oxford or like, whatever. She studied math and science. She's a math
Yeah.
and science teacher. And he felt like such terrible things have happened. He needs to get like London's not far enough away. Where can we
Yeah.
go? That's
Out of
like,
Europe.
yeah. But
Yeah.
then he picks like the place that has apartheid. Like in his mind, he's like, that's not as bad as what we're
Yeah.
dealing with. And
Yeah.
so then
Yeah.
my family is there, and they're like, we don't want our kids to be in this. And
Yeah.
so they moved us to America. Like we can't have our kids grow up in this apartheid thing. So it's like
Yeah.
from one place to another to the States. And then you
To
find
another
what's
place,
going
like constantly like going away from systems you don't want to live in or grow up in
right.
actually
And then
then.
it's so funny because like now we're dealing with this political situation in the States where like,
Mm.
during COVID and everything, there's almost this like, do I need to leave here?
Yeah.
Am I, but aside from
Yeah.
that, yeah, I was being born in Cape Town during apartheid. This is like a huge part of who I am that I have a really hard time expressing. Um, and I can only imagine the only way I know how to express it really is in the music because
Yeah.
like there's these experiences that
Yeah.
go along with that. And there's a sense of like, without sounding too weird, I do feel like I'm kind of like in a way African.
It's exactly where I want, like what I was thinking, like
Like
what I
that's
wanted to
what I
check.
when
Yeah.
I visit there, I'm like, this feels like home. I mean, I was born
Yeah.
there, like this is where
Yeah.
my metachlorians came from or whatever.
Amazing. Yeah, because if I heard it correctly, you moved away when you were like 3 or 4, right? So really young,
Pretty
basically.
young. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I know that we were in Hershey, Pennsylvania when I was, yeah, about 4 probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like obviously super young then, but I was indeed wondering, like, do you have the feeling of heritage there, and in what way do you feel like it has an influence on your creative development? But if I hear it correctly, it's actually like pretty much the only way or the only real way you can express it, even like that
I
feeling.
mean,
Or
like it's hard to have conversations with people about it, and it's hard to like have the context, especially in the United States. Well, maybe not, but I mean, but people who
Mm.
grew up here, they don't understand sometimes the dynamics of the world, you
Yeah,
know.
it can be more complex than.
But yeah, like you walk around my family's houses and my house, and there's like art and you know African stuff, and I think about like you know when I visit, and I one time I visited and I heard this group of like 12 kids singing on the side of the street, and I was just like overcome with emotion listening to them, and it felt
Yeah.
so familiar. And then like I ended up asking them like, "What's the story?" And the lady who was leading this group of kids said they everyone in their family has HIV or they have HIV,
Mm.
and like I remember like renting a bus and then like taking them to a recording studio and having these musicians in Cape Town play with me. And this is like a side tangent, but we were trying to like
Yeah.
make this recording with them, but then the guys were like, "This is a little weird what you're trying to do because they don't really play with a band; they just sing by themselves." And we couldn't get them to stay in key. Like
Mm.
it was weird. It was like they stayed in key, but they kept like modulating as they got excited. And the guy was
Mm.
like, "This is just what they're used to doing." Anyway, like I don't know how to say it, how to say it, but yeah, this is a huge part of who I am. Like having going
Yeah.
back and visit and knowing this is part of my identity, and I still don't understand exactly how to achieve like the kind of like connection and resonation that I really want to do with my music. And I'm still on that
Mm.
journey. But when I close my eyes and create, like, this is a part of me that's always there.
It's amazing. I find it very interesting that it's on such a young age as well that you leave there, but that you feel such a strong connection with it, like after just a few years. And of course, also I can imagine maybe your parents having, or your family having the influence because they, how long
So
have they
yeah,
been
yeah. So
living
like
there?
everyone in my family has an accent that's from there, except for like a few cousins. I
Yeah.
don't think any family members have been born in the United States, but
Mm.
no, because my sister has kids and they're in Canada. I don't have
Mm.
my own yet. So
Mm.
so everyone kind of has an accent. So when you meet people from the family, and then we would go back every winter or summer, and like it would be like, well, this is your family, and it's like they all were from there, and then some of them moved over here. So yeah, just it continues.
Yeah. I can imagine. All right. And then, yeah, you were in the jazz band at high school, and then you got the scholarship through your playing in there, I understood, right? How is that? Like, is that a normal thing in the US to get a scholarship if you play in the school band and you do well, or how does that work?
The high school I went to was Roosevelt, and it was like a kind of an arts magnet. Like it was a big tradition of jazz
Mm.
studies. Great, great teacher, great history of teachers.
Mm.
And there was us, and then there's Garfield, which was like across the city, and we were like rivals, but we would go to these national competitions and place like first and second,
Mm.
really great two high schools. So you have these like,
So they were both very skilled,
yeah,
actually.
you got like
Like they would
basically like
rank one and
20,
two.
like 20
Yeah.
or so kids in a jazz band, or, whatever, 12 to 20. And so you have two of them, and we would all like hang out and like play records and exchange ideas, what we're
Cool.
working on, and talk about like legendary music when we were young and in high school, and like meet up at these competitions. And, basically for an hour and a half a day, like I'm playing Duke Ellington or Count Basie, as a 14-year-old. And so that
Mm.
the guitar doesn't have a huge role there. You're kind of just playing a lot of rhythm, but just being around it and feeling that like swing, and having a teacher that, Scott Brown was my teacher there. And he was just always like, more emphasis was placed on like how to feel it and like how to get into it and like what to listen to and why to listen to these things, and taking us to go see like legendary people when they were in town. And when we would go perform, it would be built into us that we're like playing these feelings. It wouldn't be so much about the technical aspect, although
Yeah.
he was very demanding that everybody prepared their parts like homework wise, so that once you got
Mm.
into the room, he could work with us. But it was really a very fortunate experience. And I liken it to sometimes like the famous jazz musicians like the Miles Davis and Charlie Parker's and John Coltrane's.
Mm.
If you look at these guys' histories and read their biographies, it's almost always like they got out of high school, they moved somewhere, maybe they went to college, but probably not. And they played in this guy's big band for like these years and toured around the country. And they played in this guy's big band for that long. Like that's what was happening in the 40s and 50s to create the jazz of the 60s and 70s. These guys all went through that rite of passage. And
Hmm.
for my generation and for kids now, if you can get into a jazz band program in high school that's serious, you're playing every day for an hour and a half. Then on weekends, you're still playing shows sometimes and you're traveling.
Yeah.
So you get that exposure to that
So it's
big
just
band.
like a great environment to be in because you get like the amount of repetition. But if I hear it correctly, like the teacher you had was also pretty brilliant because he actually sparked your motivation and interest in the feeling part. And therefore you felt motivated maybe to do all the technical stuff. Like he wasn't trying to make you do the technical stuff, right? He really sparked that, emotional motivation or what, like for what to listen to.
Yeah, he was brilliant. He like sort of harnessed the all the different personalities of all the kids in the
Yeah.
room, and he addressed us like more closer to like adults than any of the other teachers, like math or science teachers.
Yeah.
And he was, held people accountable, but he was like the way he did it was more closer to the historical. And then fast forward that, and I had this amazing, scholarship. There was a lady going around from the New School in New York, and that was my dream school. And it's basically in New York City, and it was kind of run by like all the jazz legends and masters
Yeah.
that lived in New York. And there's that period of time where like a lot of these guys were, in their 70s, 60s, 50s, and they were legendary, but they're like not touring and they probably didn't make as much money as you think they did off their
Mm.
recordings. And so they're
Yeah.
there available teaching. And I got to have like just this incredible list of like teachers in college. And this lady, I think her name was, oh, I remember it was like something Howell, her name, but
Mm.
she went around the country to some of the high schools. She walked in our room and she's like, we have a scholarship available, and just you should apply. And I applied. And
Great.
really what happened was the first year I didn't get the scholarship completely. Like they gave me like a half or something. And then there was another school in New Jersey called Rutgers, and they had, I don't know if you know jazz, but Kenny Barron was there, who's like a legendary jazz piano player. Ted Dunbar, this guitar player is incredible, like Wes Montgomery style. Ralph Bowen was there. Ralph Peterson, Mike Peterson, Mike Richmond. The bass player
Mm.
played with Miles Davis. This guy, Badal Roy, who's like the tabla player from On the Corner with Miles Davis. Like these guys were at
Like,
Rutgers, and,
yeah.
and they offered me a scholarship. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, if you don't. So I went there for the first year or whatever, and then went back to the new school where I wanted to go. Was like, hey guys, like you gave me a scholarship last year, but I wasn't enough. And they were able to give me more.
Mm.
And then I went there, which was my dream school. And I spent the next 4 years there.
Amazing. Is it also like that, the new school you said, it was called, right?
Yeah. And basically like I was at the new school during 9/11,
Yeah.
which is when this track was inspired.
Yeah.
So I was there from like, 98 to 2006, probably like on that part of the world.
And is it also like because you said it was my dream school because these teachers were all there and that like was amazing to learn from? Is it also because of that you had these like well-known artists that you worked with, like with that I mentioned in the intro as well, like the
Yeah.
REM, Pearl Jam, Rage Against, Pendulum? Is that
Well,
connected to the school or is it a
no,
network
no,
that
no,
you
not those
shaped?
guys. Some people are connected. There's actually a lot of people I'd like to work with more that I
Yeah,
was connected with in New York. And part of me actually kind of like romanticizes of what my life would be like if I stayed in New York. That's a whole nother thing.
it's again like all the possibilities, right?
Yeah, and I'd
Yeah,
like to live there again.
yeah.
No, like the new school was like Robert Glasper was there. I don't know if you know him, but he's like this.
Mm,
Everybody who's listening like must check him out. A genius. He was in my class, like we were classmates.
mm.
And him along with like 10 or 11 other guys that were like on his caliber, ended up kind of being like the who's who of the next jazz generation. And
Mm.
he was incredible with his ability to kind of like move the style forward. And he's kind of like Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock of now, but he also has like a hip hop side to him where he works with like a lot of very well known like hip hop producers and rap
Cool.
and singers. But like that was directly from the new school. And like there's EJ and Marcus Strickland and Mike Rodriguez, this trumpet player who's, you know, and Manuel Valero is my roommate. Like these guys are in New York just and out there doing incredible things. But the other list of people you mentioned was more coming back to Seattle, which was where I went to high school, and had a rock band called Big High for a while, which
Mm.
is a good thing to check out. Also, if you're only familiar with my instrumental stuff or my jazz or jam stuff,
Hmm.
Big High was like a kind of grunge rock band I had, and
Cool.
we had an amazing drummer who was in Mad Season and Screaming Trees. That Mad Season was like, you know, some Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains kind of put together.
Mm.
And so yeah, there's just I had access to some opportunities to play with some people that I dreamed to work with, and I think there's
Yeah.
just it starts with a respect of like, oh, they like what you're doing artistically, and
Yeah. And then you just ran into, like, they knew your project from
it
places
is
you
a little bit
played,
like
or
that with some of those
yeah.
names you're mentioning. Like each situation is its own story.
Yeah.
We could go 10 minutes on or 20
Yeah.
minutes on any one
Any specific story.
person. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was just curious about it because it's obviously quite a gap between like the start out of with the Terminator, so to say,
Oh yeah,
and ending up with like projects like that, and what I want to touch on in a bit, like starting a record label and those kind of things. But
yeah.
I was just curious, like if you retrospectively would look at that gap in between those two, are there like three moments, people or things that like you feel like maybe for people watching now at the beginning of their career, so to say, like what are things that really helped you on your creative journey, so to say,
For someone who's wants some advice on their creative journey, I would
or
say
just what worked for you, like
it worked for me.
maybe making
There's
it
so
feel like
much.
advice could be so heavy, but
I think that like, you know, I had some really great teachers,
mm,
starting with the jazz band teacher, and then, you know, the teachers that I had that were like showing me how to play jazz, or going to college, going to New York and being with those legendary kind of teachers out there, and then finding mentors. I think, you know, one thing is to set up yourself with like lessons, to make a budget, to prioritize like investing in yourself and what you're most passionate about. And
mm,
in doing so, you're also supporting the person that you're paying, that you're hiring as a teacher. In
mm,
some cases, you might find some mentors that aren't doing it for the money, and that's great too. But I think finding a teacher and having a weekly one-on-one lesson is a big part of this journey and will help everybody. And not only would I also encourage you to do it, but also if you have kids, I would say get your kids signed up. That's a big part of my entire holistic thing, right? Because I have the music school, the music factory,
yeah,
and we're always thinking about how we can grow and impact more people. And I want to get like an online music education thing going more. But I think like, you know, one advice is to get a teacher and a series of teachers, and to always have a teacher. And then you could have a teacher that you're normally working with once a week on your basics, but you could also find people and say, I really like what you're doing. Would you give me a lesson? You know, what would you charge for an hour? You know, and
yeah,
you might be surprised. Like some of these guys, you know, will, will, you'll be surprised who can make time for you if you can give them a little bit of money and what you can learn by just talking to them or showing them where you're at. Then the
yeah,
other thing I would advise is if there's like a thing that you really want to do, that you know you really want to do, and this is beyond music, but
mm,
try your best to do the thing you really want to do. It's really easy in this life to like say that you have to do these other things because they fit better, or because people like them more, or because
mm,
they pay more money. And I think a lot of
mm,
people lose a lot of potentiality by not spending more time doing the thing they really want to do. So
Mm.
being able to identify what you really want to do in the moment or in a short term amount of time, and then being able to go after that and really going after it, especially when you're young, I would advise,
Yeah.
like, when you're young is a good time to make recordings and to go tour and to build your band. But again, like everybody's in a different journey, and that's the other side is everybody also wants to be like at the eye of the pyramid, like
Mm.
all the way at the top, like where they want to envision themselves, but you don't get there without just putting one brick at a time. So,
Yeah.
also being humble and being able to just be humble and be like, I can't control, you know, how that all happens up there, but I know I can put one brick here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like just seeing what you can do now and what you can control, basically. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that are some good takeaways, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, also like I'm available potentially for someone to take some lessons with. I would charge
Yeah.
for it, but I could
Yeah.
also like recommend other people like in my program for someone to take lessons with, and that's a big part of what's important to me. So,
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm gonna touch on like why you started the music school, obviously, because I
mhm.
think that's like it's clear that you're having a more holistic approach to your whole music thing. But before we touch on that, I would also just want to talk a bit about your music yourself, because that's where it's all started, obviously. And I was just intrigued by, I think I saw it on the Bandcamp under one of the track descriptions or something, that you currently set this challenge for yourself to release 24 songs in 2024. Is this right? Did I saw
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I'm a little bit behind schedule, but we have
It's summer holiday.
yeah, we got 4 more months. So I'll be able to hopefully figure out some magic. But I'm close. I
Yeah.
think I'm like at you know I think I'm at like 18 releases for the label, and maybe 16 of them are mine, or
Crazy.
I'm close, and I
Yeah.
can count it. I don't know, but basically, I really struggled to. I struggled with. I think everybody has their own struggles, and their
Mm.
own obstacles, and I've been around for long enough that I've experienced quite a few, and some things have been more stronger deterrents than others, and some things have been more stronger motivators than others, and this and that. But it's been hard. It's historically been really hard for me to release music, and I think there's a few things that go into that. Like one is by the time I record something and then mix it and then start getting into you know, producing it and then get the artwork, there's like 100 other things that have come on my plate.
Yeah.
And so, and then it might be 6 months, and then I'm not as interested in this thing I started.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really get to finish. Another one is, how do you, like when you're talking about like expressing this deep thing, like this
Mm.
something I'm so passionate about and I want it to be on this high level. And sometimes historically couldn't get it to match how I wanted it to be as far as just the quality of the sounds or the way I played or, the final version. And so a lot of times I would stall. And there's other things too. Like sometimes you're in a band and you guys the four of you record, and then one guy like leaves the band, and then
Mm.
now the recording's not getting out there, or there's like a conflict of, how much money you should spend on this or that.
Yeah.
There's so many things, and it's kept me from sharing my art. And it wasn't until a few things happened in my life and I realized a little bit more that this isn't forever, that we're here. I started to think about how I can I started to realize I have like just, stacks of hard drives filled with recording projects that I've started but not finished.
Mm.
And just the same thing I was talking about with the pyramid, like one brick at a time.
Yeah.
I started just saying, I'm just going to put one song out at a time and get the
Yeah.
artwork for it. And I started to enjoy the process more when
Mm.
it was a little more realistic, like maybe not a whole album, but just one song at a time. And then I started to realize I can put one song at a time from each project I'm working on. and really put the time into what I want, because for me to kind of get it to where I want it to get it, you're talking about like 100 hours per song or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know the number, but
I
it's up
mean,
there. And
yeah.
that's just after it's been recorded. I just want to like get the sound and the effects and then the artwork. So when I started kind of approaching it that way, I realized when I put it out there, things would move forward in a way that was like joyful for me. Like
Yeah.
people would say they enjoy it, and it felt good for me to have it out there. And then I started to pick up a pace, but I would still run into obstacles. I gave myself this challenge to see if I could um, find a rhythm in putting out music, and also sort of compensate for um, you know 15 years of not finishing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw on Spotify, I wanted to check that like I think the oldest song under Ari Joshua is 2004, and then there's a gap until 2020, but that's probably filled with a lot of creation and the other projects that you're working on then as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's some music out there that's released that's not under my name that I'm on, that you could probably find from like
Mm.
2000, 5 to 2020, but it's
Yeah.
going to be hard to find. And
Yeah.
really, it wasn't until pandemic when it's like, imagine I had to have the world stop to be able to
Yeah.
process. And not everybody's like that. Some people are blessed with being able to focus on one project, get it released, put it out there,
Hmm.
go on tour.
Yeah.
Had to have the world stop for me to be able to like sit down and think about how I'm going to get this done. And then once I started doing it, I just found a lot of um, reward in there.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also, it sounds like such a great step in your creative journey. Like also recently that you figured out like, hey, wait, this way of approaching it isn't working for me. I'm gonna try it this other way. And like, it's nice to hear that others find it nice to see what you do and that you felt consistently in it. But most importantly, also that you felt like you found some more joy back in it. I think that's, yeah, super important. And
Yeah.
tricky to lose that because it's in music, at least how I feel it. If you lose the joy in it, then it's not gonna be good music because you cannot, it's not the right feeling in it and stuff. It's,
Yeah. I mean,
I
you
can
could also, I
imagine.
mean, it's like, I think there is like it's okay to have like like it's okay to have pain and like sorrow and blues
Mm,
and all that in the music. It's part of it, but I don't know. It's sort of like, if you're like, I don't know, I get inspired by learning about artists and like looking at how they do it. And
mm,
there's all kinds of different artists, and there's some people who are really lucky and they're discovered at a young age and they have a lot of recognition, but
mm.
then just dies out. And then they're unhappy later and they don't have and on the other hand, there's people who, work their whole life and aren't recognized, like someone like Van Gogh,
Mm.
and then they die. And then someone goes into their basement and is like, holy cow, there's like
Yeah.
1,000 paintings
Yeah.
down here. They're all amazing. And then it's like the painting of the vase with the
Yeah.
flowers. And he
Yeah.
made like six of those.
In general, um, it's in general like also Spotify making the move to not pay for the first 1,000 streams. Like, why not? I mean, people are spinning it, apart from even the money they pay for it and stuff like that.
It's like a
So
slap in the face. It's just like, we have you like so far in the chokehold.
yeah,
Like we're just gonna like
it's
squeeze it even more. Do you have any
it's
ideas for like solutions? Like,
it's
do you have any
yeah.
ideas?
No, not really in that
Mm.
sense. I think I strongly believe that what I really love to see also on this new like Instagram threads thing, there is more community shaping and there is like a lot of indie artists starting to find each other and really actively engage with each other's profile and share each other's things and really be supportive. And I think that is in terms of like love for each other and helping each other a good sign. Um, but it's also like, what do artists need now to make a living from it? They need to play shows and get paid well for it. Therefore, they need the attention. but the attention is like basically buying, so to say. And like obviously you need to invest in things and stuff, but where's the money going? Like what you mentioned earlier, when you pay a teacher, you're also investing money into your peers, into your scene, into your community, and your
Yeah.
community is exchanging value there, and it grows within that community. And now it's just going to this tech billionaire that Jen can like at some point build an extra golden toilet in his yacht or something. And I think that's like not the right way. And I don't think it's sustainable in the long term as well, because yeah, I don't know. It's the question where the turning point is. So how are you feeling about that? Do you feel like there's
I mean, I think that's why
excess?
I mean, that's why I'm doubling down and spending like half my time being an artist and half my time developing education stuff.
Yeah.
Because, I wasn't able to afford to, I mean, some of my friends from, when I was younger, they were able to put out records and go on tour. I think their families maybe helped them get started, or they just had a different outlook. I always had to kind of make it work for myself without really any kind of help. So I found that like in teaching, I was able to generate more income than producing music. And
Mm-hmm.
it really helped me because I was able to do like something that I loved and was passionate about and share that with other people. And I really think that there's a way that artists, I think there's got to be ways that people can say, I love this artist. I love what they're doing. I want to help them, but there's other ways that they can provide value and help them. And one of them is like sharing, knowledge and
Yeah.
teaching. I would love to be able to like be the guy who could help like thousands of artists make millions of dollars for themselves by
Yeah.
giving them access to more
Tools. Yeah.
teaching or just exploring ways to incorporate education
Yeah.
into the job description.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just opening up your 2 days a week or just a few people, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because that's like with that's a nice bridge to like the record label and the school then as well. Like you both run them under the musicfactory.com, I think it is, right? For the website.
Musicfactorynw.com is our school. And then
Hmm.
the label, I think we just have it on Bandcamp right now, but we're working on a website.
So I'll link everything in the description as well, so people can check that out, of course.
Mhm.
But how did you come up like with um, setting up the record label and setting up the music school? Like what you mentioned, is it like from this feeling of unfairness in the scene as well, and trying to like create a more fair environment or help people out that are like struggling with that environment? Or
Yeah. I mean, I think the same way that I learned music on my own and with these teachers, and then started to share my skills there. And then and then I realized that I was making enough money to survive like at like 24 years old or 23 years old,
mm,
where a lot of my friends were really, really having a hard time. And so I said to myself, like, I'm going to find a building and I'll live in the building for a little while and I'll teach out of it, but then I'll use the other rooms for my friends to teach in. And so I was able
mm,
to give my friends jobs,
mm,
and I'd like to keep doing that, but it's because I kind of did it for myself and then made the model. And I think with the label, I would love to be on some of these bigger labels, but if you sit around in today's world and just wait for big label to take you or big
yeah,
booking agent or whatever, it's just not going to happen. You
yeah.
have to really build it yourself.
And it doesn't fit in your new approach of like actually getting stuff out instead of saving up your hard drives. Yeah.
I would also, yeah, exactly. You couldn't have
Yeah.
control over that, but I would also kind of like work on like, okay, well, what does a label do? And it has this person, that person. And I would go to these people and I want to hire you to do this. If you can't put me on your label, but you work for this label, can I just pay you to do this service for me? And then the
Yeah.
cost of doing that service is so far out of reach again.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will resonate with that. And so like I realized, for example, like a publicist could be like $3,000 a month or
Yeah. Yeah.
$1,000 a month. Or
Yeah.
maybe you can't even get somebody unless you pay, this much. And then what are they doing? And then, well, you're paying for their relationships and their time, and they know these magazines. And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, what about if I just make my own list of all these magazines and email
Yeah.
them myself? And then how do you put your music on? Well, you can use DistroKid or TuneCore. In my situation, I happen to know one of the guys who worked for TuneCore in the beginning,
Mm.
which is a digital distribution. And so
Yeah.
he's kind of got the back end of our label.
Mm.
Like, it's almost the same as DistroKid. It's like, but
Yeah.
it's mine. Like, it's our own
Yeah.
system,
Perfect.
but it's like a
Yeah.
catalog system that sends all the information out that I own all the metadata. I know, and it's all connected. So if I, and I have control over it. So if I work with someone who's well known, like, their name's going to come up and my name's going to come up with someone who's worked with them. And then
Yeah.
they're going to get the same listeners.
Yeah. You have a bit more control about like the whole process.
And if somebody wanted to like put my song, like, I understand people make money from like licensing and TV. Like, if you don't have all your information together when they ask you, like, they're going to go to someone else. There's so many choices. But now everything's set up that if I could get my song in a movie someday, it would just be like, oh yeah, we have everything organized, all the codes, all the names, all the files.
It's just sending out the file, and then they have what they need, so to say.
Yeah, so it's working good. And we've had two artists that we signed, and I'm open to bringing in artists and basically giving the same services. I think in general, Einstein kind of said that the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where this comes from, this label, making a label. It's like, well, this didn't work and that didn't work. How do we make this music industry work? And like, it's not going to be the way it's going. Like, someone's going to have to figure something out. So this is just a vehicle for me to try stuff and to learn and to have control over my own art and to set myself up for the future, longer term, like 5-10 years from now. And I have a lot of ideas for things, almost too many ideas.
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
but yeah, I wish I had more of a team of people, but I'm building it. And
I was gonna refer to your earlier statement of like brick by brick, right? So
yeah. So
one brick at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do have like these ideas, like, what if an artist could be on the label and then that artist also did like educational content around their releases and then offered one-on-one individual lessons to be paid. And so now, by being on our label, like, there's this toolkit that's like bigger, that really figures stuff out in a different way, that also interfaces with the education side. And that's why I have it as the same name as the school.
Yeah.
Because I want it to all eventually, I have a vision for it. For me to make it happen, you never know how things happen, but from what I understand, well, what I would hope is that someday could get some funding, like investors, and the type of investors that would be like, we believe in you as a person, and we believe that you're, and we see what you've done. Like, I can have it on paper. Like, it's not just a guy who's playing guitar or played guitar when he was a kid or wants people to hear their music, but it's someone who, has this history and this life and played, and it means so much to them that they went and studied it in college, and then they opened up a school and then provided jobs for other musicians, and then has a label, but learned the system so that they could get out there, and then maybe other people could use it.
Yeah.
And then have someone just say, well, here's a big chunk of money so you can really do this, but I don't know when that happens or if it ever does.
Yeah, exactly. But I get your point there, that it's like you're not just having love for music, you're not just having love for the music you create, but you really want to express that hard for the industry and for the community, and see how you can build that out, basically.
I think
It's
that it's
amazing.
so
Yeah.
valuable. I think that like
Yeah.
every child should learn music. I think that like it should be, maybe
Yeah.
not every, but like at least like one in every, like 50%.
I mean, it's quite a universal language. Of course, we have different influences from different areas in the world, but it's at least everyone can hear it, and everyone can understand it. It's quite a universal language there, I
Yeah, and
think.
like every kid should be exposed to like these are the legends, and this is
Yeah.
why they're legendary. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and adults, and then you get older, and it's like there's so many health benefits. I mean, we know this. Like the way that
Yeah.
we overthink things is like, and worry about things is connected to disease. Like
Yeah.
people go see, they're trying to cure themselves from something, and they're working on their meditation. But when you play music, you're not using your mind in that normal kind of societal way. You're almost meditating in a way.
Yeah.
Like if you just play the note and you just be with the note. And we already know, like with people who completely lose all their memory, like complete Alzheimer's, like if you sing them a song from their childhood, they'll sing the whole song. They can't remember anything else, and then they see people even who have Alzheimer's, just like people who do these studies where they can like start to write a new song, and then they end up communicating things like, I actually don't want to be in this institution. I want to be with my brother. This is his name. This is the city he lives in. But they're doing it by singing it. You know what I mean? Like there's like something about the brain that if you learn an instrument, you might be able to forget everything else, but you could snap that back in place. So what is that? That's
Yeah.
miraculous. That's like vibrational. That's like,
That's a
that's
different level. Yeah.
like there's like music is healing. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like it's to me, it blows my mind how it's disrespected on the financial ecosystem.
Yeah.
And when it's, you'll pay for like these other healing modalities. I'll go in, people go in and it's like $100 for an hour, $150 for an hour.
Yeah.
No problem. Or $10,000 bill, $20,000 bill. But
Yeah.
like music is just left off where it's
Yeah.
just so like, yeah, I think education wise, I think every young person and every old person should be playing an instrument
Yeah.
just for their health,
Yeah.
just for their
100%.
health.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Like it has benefits maybe in a band form even more because you're then also having the social contact and stuff, but doesn't matter. Like for the meditational, like being in the moment present with something as well. It's amazing. Yeah.
I'm
I
just gonna
agree.
grab my charger key.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries.
I'm just setting up my power again. I'm doing music because I think it's my way of contributing to a better world, And so like people can like help and invest in that by like signing up for lessons for their kids, or for themselves, and just, do it through our website.
Yeah.
And now, you're supporting an artist on the other side, and you're getting your music, which I think even if you just have one-on-one lessons with someone who's skilled once a week, it could be in
Yeah.
many cases more valuable than therapy. Like some people
Yeah.
don't even like therapy,
Yeah.
and you can talk to your teacher about your emotions and like what's going on in your life. You can write a song about something.
Yeah.
You can say, I really like this song because it makes me feel a certain way. And even if you don't practice, because some people are like, oh, I'm going to stop my lessons because I'm not practicing. Even if you just have that appointment once a week and you keep it
Yeah.
for, 6 months, a year, or 5 years, or 10 years, you're still supporting that artist, and you're still going to be improving and like deepening your appreciation for music.
Yeah. That's great.
I even say it's kind of like a gym membership. I have
Yeah.
a gym membership. I haven't even been in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I pay for it. But if I had a weekly meeting with someone, I would go to that meeting and I would do my exercises during that time. And even if they wanted me to go do the work at home, like, yeah, it would be better if I did the work like as agreed, like 3 days a week.
Definitely.
But if I didn't and I still went to my weekly appointment consistently, like just the fact that it's resetting me to think about my health, my priorities, my eating, And just that 1 hour a week of coached workout over the course of 6 months or a year is going to make me better.
Yeah.
And so I
No,
think with
definitely.
music, it's the same thing. Like I think music lessons, just having a locked in
Yeah.
weekly teacher, I'm just a huge advocate for it, and for both adults and for kids.
Yeah.
And that's why I have the music factory. And then, and I do it because I'm super passionate about music and art, and that's why I make the
Yeah.
music.
Yeah,
So
that's wonderful. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure to link all that below so that people can also check it out, because you mentioned that you have plans for like a digital online lesson course coming up, right? As well, that you're
yeah,
working
I'm
on.
trying to build like a portal. So basically during COVID, we're able to transfer like 95% of our students online.
Yeah. Yeah, so
There,
there that happened, but it helped you as well because now you can have this idea for the online lessons. Yeah.
yeah, I know it works, and I know that you can,
Yeah.
and I imagine there's people out there that are, unless you have a music school that you can drive to that's like within 20 minutes
Yeah.
from your house, then the next option is online. And I think
Yeah.
like probably like 90% of the world like doesn't
Yeah.
have great musicians near them, but maybe they
Yeah.
want their kids to learn or they want to learn.
Yeah, wonderful.
I think building a platform it's not a new idea. Like a lot of people do it, but I guess the
Yeah.
difference would be that like I would continually reinvest in my art, and I would be nurturing other artists and like figuring out like a more holistic kind of brand kind of thing around it. Um,
That's wonderful. Yeah, then definitely people can stay like in touch, or check out the website and probably follow you on socials. You'll probably share about it when it's live, and people
yeah,
can
there's a
reach
lot of
out.
things that I haven't really like social media. I haven't really like done it. Like I get in there, but I understand there's a lot more I can do with it.
Mm.
And I hope to figure a little bit more out about that in the next couple of years, like how to reach people
Mm.
there and tell a story. It'd be great if like some of these like
How?
these tech companies, especially like Apple,
Mm.
and TikTok and Instagram, where there's so much about their identity is the music.
Yeah.
And it'd be great if they could just like put aside like,
Yeah.
$100 million or something and start to just give out grants
Yeah.
and contracts to people. And like, you know,
Agreed.
these people would be like basically promoting their brand more anyway. Like
Yeah.
if Apple came to me and said, we're going to give you, like $500,000, and we really like your idea and we like what you're standing for. And then
Yeah.
the rule was like, I can only keep like, whatever, like their standard of poverty, like 3,000 a month or something, out of this half a
Yeah.
million, but the rest is all going back in. And I could
Yeah.
say on every video, like, thank you to Apple for helping us do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And like, and we're spreading this education and or my music that I'm working on. But
Yeah.
they don't do that. They don't, you don't see that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. But why would they give the money away if it's not needed for their profit, right?
It's,
Because the people are using it anyways now, and that's like the issue, I think.
but yeah, so like the other thing it would be cool to go into, I don't know how much time we have, but I have this list
Yeah.
of releases. Like if I could just,
Yeah. Tell me a bit about like the things
yeah, so like,
upcoming.
and you can ask any questions there. But
Mm.
so on the label, I think I'm just going to count. This is not from, so yeah, it's just the last year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 18 in the last 12 months, 18 releases.
Nice. Yeah.
And so starting with in September, I had like an African Afro groove track called Combo Wombo.
Mm.
And that was recorded with a batch of songs in Vermont so one of my favorite bands is Fish with a PH. And
Mm.
the guitar player for that band, Trey Anastasio, has his solo project. They're from Vermont. And I was able to go do a couple sessions with the keyboard player and drummer from that band. So that's
Mm.
like one of my absolute like idols, heroes of all time. And it's his
Amazing.
bandmates. And then that was in September last year. And then the next release, Dragon's Lair, with John Medeski and Billy Martin, who were like, again, two of my heroes. They're like legends of experimental jazz. I would go see them when I was like 19 in New York, like every month. And they would be playing like, downtown New York, very avant-garde, but with a deep respect to the history of the music. And
But
they were,
amazing that they like end up on your label then, right? That's like also a dream come true, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. In fact, like when I
Yeah.
was 19, I had the, I don't know what the word is, the conviction to go up to them after they'd play and hey, I'm
Mm.
studying music. These are my teachers. I'd really like to play with you guys. How could I play with you? But it was like out of reach. It was sort of like,
But still, you went for it. That's like,
well, I mean, but the thing is, I kept touch with them. So like,
yeah.
5 years goes by, you see one of them, how you doing? I'm working on this. Oh, cool. I'd like to hear that. Another 5 years goes by. And then, you never know. This is like 15 years later, able
Mm.
to work with them. I'm really proud of that song, Dragon's Lair.
Cool.
Then Flask, which is like a through composed kind of mix of rock and Baroque, almost
Hmm.
like Bach mixed with rock, kind of like classical. If you're a musician, there's a lot of time signatures. Like the chart, if you looked at it, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1. A lot of that kind of stuff.
Switching around a lot with the
Yeah,
rhythms. Yeah.
yeah. And I really enjoy writing like that, but it's hard to find people that will play it. But that's a good recording. And then there's a recording called Country Stroll, which is
Hmm.
also with John Medeski and Billy Martin. And then Elephant Walk, also with John Medeski, Billy Martin. Those are a little more traditional,
Hmm.
recorded in Woodstock, New York. And then Elon's Musk, which is with this electronic music producer, Il Gates. So it's like Il Gates,
Cool.
and the song is called Elon's Musk. It's like EDM kind of song. And then
Definitely checking that out. Yeah.
Rare Groove, which is the one that of all my songs has gotten the most amount of attention.
Yeah, we had that one coming by as well. I think we featured it in one of the earlier community tracks episodes that we did. I
Amazing.
think we touched then. That's the first time we got in touch. I think for Rare Groove.
That's like, that
Yeah,
session with Delvon Lamar, who's been actually playing around Europe a lot, and this
yeah,
amazing saxophone player, Skerrick. And it's kind of got like a more organic 60s soul jazz kind of organ trio kind of sound.
yeah.
And then the next song released is Audio Bicycle Day, which I have three versions out. This particular version in March was with Joe Doria and Brad Gibson, and it's got like some old string samples. It's really cool. Then we put out a record or a song with this artist, Roman Angelos from New York. He's a guitar player like me, and we have a really similar love of music. And he's like, someone who's really been supportive and involved, and we're putting out his music on the label, and
Yeah.
we have a whole more series of music, like remixes, coming out with him soon.
Yeah, cool.
And then a song called Swamp Squamp, which was like a throwback track from 2005 around. I released One Dub, which is like a reggae song with John Kimmock, Andy Hess, Ed and Ladine. Then Starlight Mountain, which is like a Black Crowes kind of rock song. Skidoo, which is like funk rock. And then,
You also like literally have like 5 releases in a month, then, right? Yeah,
yeah, and sometimes, yeah, like in May of
like
2000.
one every week. Yeah,
Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
And then Roman's full album came out in June. Summer's been a little slow, but Tagine, which you picked up and
Yeah.
sparked this interview, that came out July 19th, and then another version of Audio Bicycle Day, which is currently getting playlisted on Spotify. And next up is this song called the Triceratops. The artwork is like kind of like a triclops with wings. Like
That sounds amazing.
that's gonna be with
Sounds like a space monster, which is
it's a
completely
space
our
monster,
vibe.
it totally is. And then that's with the Vermont guys. And then after that I've got a ballad coming out. So
Amazing.
So yeah, just like
Yeah,
kind of just getting this out. I'm really,
quite a bunch then, huh?
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a bunch. Yeah, and what you mentioned, like on Tagine, I was just curious about that, and I picked it up also because I saw the story that it was if I remember correctly, it's pretty much that the ID for the song came up when you were driving over the
It's like,
bridge from Brooklyn. Yeah, that's nice. Is it a
that's the
flag
artwork.
or is
That's
it a
the art.
flag or like a blanket?
This is the artwork. So this is what I've been doing is like, I haven't gotten to the point where we're like selling a lot of merch, but I'm
Yeah.
like, my dream is that someday I will, like, like, so, but this is a way that someone could buy the artwork. And
Mm,
I try to like make the artwork really cool.
they are
And
very
yeah, these
cool.
are kind of like these flags that are for sale of each album.
I
Um,
love the fluorescent colors and stuff. It's really cool.
but yeah.
Yeah.
You read about the inspiration there. I didn't mean to cut you
Yeah,
off.
so I was wondering about it because, like, if the ID came up in the days after 9/11, right? Like, this the story behind the track, if I got it right, is like you were driving towards a gig in this Moroccan restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
You drove over the bridge from Brooklyn to New York City in like a couple of days after 9/11. That was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what was it in that moment that stood out so much to you that you felt the urge to write a song about that?
That time I was just overflowing with music writing.
Mm.
It was like my last year of school at new school and being in New York. And I mean, actually, like I used to write so much. I would wake up every day and like write an idea.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be abnormal for me to write at that time. But the fact that that all happened brought out this kind of sound, this sort of like
Yeah.
drony,
Yeah.
the harmonies like diminished. So it's like it's like already kind of a very, you
It's a
know,
bit eerie. A
an
bit
eerie kind of sound.
like,
And then
yeah.
when I, again, like it takes me a while to produce stuff, but when I started finding sounds, I found sounds that, and they're kind of going on in the stereo field. And it's like these, like almost like radio signals and things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I picked up on it as well, because it sounded a bit like this satellite connection sounds in there as well. Like a bit the radio static, um, finding the connection and stuff, what I hear.
yeah. I mean, the time was crazy. Like I remember teaching. I had a student that like worked at the World Trade Center area and like just
Mm.
never hearing from them again. Like I was teaching like a couple people at my apartment, and I don't even. But it
Yeah.
was also like it wouldn't be abnormal for me to like lose track with them for like a month, or they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know what their fate was. It could,
Yeah.
but that was like boom, like like
Yeah. You just don't
my
know. Yeah.
girlfriend like worked down in that area and there was no
Yeah.
way to communicate. There was no cell phone situation.
No.
And I remember going for a walk out my door to the grocery store and like you could see the smoke that just went like a mushroom cloud of smoke that looked like it went to the moon.
Yeah.
And I remember like parents like walking their kids and like looking up at this smoke and there's a smell, like the whole city had a smell. And, there was like, it was something else to be there. It was kind of traumatic and
Surreal, maybe,
surreal, but
if you tell it to me. Yeah.
like really sympathize for people like in war zones, like people who are in like, Gaza or like anywhere that there's a war zone because
Yeah.
these planes, like military planes were going overhead. And because the two towers were hit, it was this feeling like they could just smash into anything.
Yeah.
And like, it would be like, you know, over the head. And it almost felt like it was going to hit my building. And that was
Yeah.
like, we weren't even in all out war or anything. It was just,
Yeah.
but yeah, Marco, who's the keyboard player on this recording, had a gig and we loaded up his Hammond organ, which is a big instrument, and the amps, and drove across the bridge and played in this Moroccan restaurant. And that was a weekly thing. Like it was like, is this happening this week? You would think it was canceled. And
Yeah.
they would just be like, yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's like, it was a very interesting time.
Crazy. Yeah, and it's Marco Benevento and Joe Rosso that you made the track with, right?
And they're like, two of like sort of the more successful people I've worked with.
Yeah.
They've really been successful. They're brilliant, like I remember playing with them and thinking to myself, like, if I could start a band with these people and play my music, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of like written this song with them in mind at that time, but then the actual recording that you hear wasn't recorded until maybe like 3 years later. So it just goes to show you should always write your music,
Yeah.
and you never know when you're going to record it and with who.
Yeah. So it was recorded like in the years after then as well. So it has been in the vault for like, what is it? Almost 20 years.
Yeah, I have so much of this music like that's just been in the vault. Yeah.
Yeah. And what made it like feel like the right time to release it now, like almost 20 years later?
I think like with a lot of this music and the way I kind of work is like this round robin kind of way. I don't think I have the ability to, I mean, like if I'm paid, if it's like a paying gig, I can focus and like complete something. Or if someone
Mm-hmm.
hires me to do their thing, I could just get it
Yeah.
done probably pretty fast. But with my art and my process and things I'm interested in, there's so many things that I'm interested in doing and want to do that like I'll work on like one song for like 5 hours and then it sits there. And then I go and I
Mm.
work on something else and it sits there. And then I have all
Mm.
these songs. And I think this song just kind of like came around and just happened to like hook me.
Yeah.
And, at some point you're like, I mean, I wanted to release this music like 15 years ago. It like builds on you. And then you just have to kind of,
Yeah.
just do it.
It comes back and then you feel like now this is it. Now it needs to go. Yeah. This is the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. It just came up
Yeah.
and just a
Amazing. Very cool. I want to give it a spin in a minute at the like end of the episode so that everybody can also actually hear and see what we talked about now and what you shared your thoughts and things about. Um, so before we're signing off and then playing the track after, I just want to finish with one question. It's also a question that I always ask all the guests, and that is if you. It's a bit in line like with our platform with the Aliens Lovert platform and concept, and it is like if you could share one tip to use or one thing to do that everyone can easily do to preserve or restore planet Earth a bit. Not break it down further, what would it be? What could you share as a tip?
What would I share as a tip to make the earth better?
Yeah, to preserve it or restore it a bit, or at least not break down the planet we have further.
I think being more mindful. I think everybody should just do their role to be more mindful. I think if you could be more present and more in touch with the moment, it gives you some time to pause and reconsider what you're doing and start to make those changes.
Mm.
Same thing with like playing music. You can kind of pause when you practice music. But I think if everybody in the world like paused for like 10 seconds a day, which is not a lot, and just to think about like being in the moment and what they can do, I would just say being mindful, because then it's enough to be like, okay, wait a minute, I could choose a Coca-Cola, or I can get this, organic drink that's a couple, like a little bit more, or I can drive my car down to the store and back, or maybe I can walk today. Like I'm going to take a minute to think and just walk, like just those little things, being mindful and trying to just take 10 seconds and adjust one action at a time.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tip. I really think that's helpful. Yeah. And I also think both examples you mentioned are actually not only good for the planet, but also for your own health. Yeah, wonderful. Cool. I want to thank you like a lot for sharing everything. From your whole story where we started in Cape Town actually, until where you are now and all your plans with the music school coming up, and with the music factory, with the label coming up. I'm very curious to follow all the releases there as well, see how many are getting out indeed this year. And also for opening up about all the topics so seriously. So yeah, thank you, massive thanks. And I think we're just gonna call it an end here now, and I'm just gonna play the Tagine record so that
Yeah,
everybody
and
can
I'll just
see
say
and
thank you
hear
so
what we
much
talk
for
about.
thanks so much for having me, and I'd love to do it again sometime. And if you can think of
Yeah,
anything that I fit into that's similar or fits in with what you're doing, let me know. But also, like, when you talk to someone for an hour or an hour and a half, or it's almost been like 2 hours,
yeah,
and it goes by like that, like that was
it's
probably
amazing. Yeah,
something's good. Like, so
yeah. I
thank you.
appreciate that massively, and yeah, as said, I really appreciated you coming on, but also like taking the time to give these answers that were not surfaced as, yeah, they were deep, and we talked about good stuff, and yeah, I think we could definitely do it again sometime, and we have a lot to talk about, I feel. So yeah, thanks a lot, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Cool. Yeah, have a
All
good day.
right,
Yeah.
have a wonderful day there.
Yeah.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Okay. Bye.